not stagnating darkness. Breath, motion, rhythm. These were his domains. Where other gods demanded sacrifice to prove loyalty, Quetzalcoatl emphasized balance. Order was not enforced, it was simply taught. The descent into Mexiclan. When the world stood empty of humanity, Quetzalcoatl descended into Mexiclan, the realm of the dead, where the remains of previous ages lay guarded by these lords of death. Now these bones were not relics, they were potentials, and the rulers of Mexiclan did not yield them willingly. They tested Quetzalcoatl with impossible trials, attempting to entrap him in his failure. And in the struggle, he stumbled, and the bones shattered. Creation itself, it seemed to have failed again. But Quetzalcoatl did not retreat. He gathered the broken remains and spilled his own divine blood upon them. From sacrifice, not dominance, humanity emerged. Imperfect, fragile, and varied. Human beings were not forged as flawless instruments. They were born of loss and intention. And this imperfection was not a flaw, it was the point. The Age of Order. In later ages, Quetzalcoatl walked among humanity as ruler priest, remembered as Tolpicin Quetzalcoatl, presiding over the city of Tula. His rule was defined not by expansion, but by refinement. Human sacrifice was rejected, arts and learning flourished, craftsmanship, astronomy, and ritual knowledge became the foundations of society. Under this guidance, civilization advanced without descending into cruelty, and this was rare, and rarity often brings attention. Where Quetzalcoatl represented restraint and continuity, Tezcatlipoca embodied conflict, reflection, and disruption. He did not confront Quetzalcoatl with armies, he confronted him with a mirror. And in that mirror, Quetzalcoatl saw not a god, but a flawed being, aging, mortal, capable of error. Temptation followed, sacred boundaries blurred. The myth does not dwell on indulgence, it dwells on consequence. Quetzalcoatl recognized that he had fallen short of his own principles, and instead of doubling down on authority, he chose removal. Exile and transformation. Quetzalcoatl did not cling to power. He left. Some traditions say he walked eastward towards the sea. Others say he burned himself on a pyre. The details differ, but the meaning remains constant. He refused to rule dishonestly. Shiva, the one who sits still. Before the worlds learned how to move, before time learned how to count itself, there was Shiva, not as a destroyer, but as the one who did not move. Shiva sits at the edge of creation, high upon the mountain, where the air is thin and the mind grows quiet. He does not rule by command. He does not speak unless spoken to. He closes his eyes, and in that closing, the universe itself exhales. Around him, galaxies turn. Stars are born and burn out. Seasons rise and fall like breath. Yet Shiva remains unmoving. His stillness deeper than that motion. His silence louder than sound. The snakes that coil around his body do not strike. They rest. The ash upon his skin is not death, but the reminder that all things return to quiet. Shiva is the god of meditation, because meditation is not escape, it is witnessing. He watches the universe dance without joining the dance. He allows desire, fear, and time to pass in front of him, like clouds crossing the sky. And because he does not cling, nothing binds him. It is said that when Shiva opens his eyes, all creation trembles. But when he keeps them closed, the creation itself learns how to breathe. In his stillness, the restless will find rest. In his silence, the loud learn how to listen. Shiva teaches without teaching. by showing that nothing needs to be forced, that even gods may sit quietly and let the world unfold on its own. And so he remains, not rushing the end, not pulling the beginning closer, but holding the space between moments, where all things are allowed to be. If the universe feels loud, Shiva sits. If the mind feels crowded, Shiva sits. And in that sitting, the night remembers how to stay calm. The Daughters of Mara. The final trial for the Buddha as he sat beneath the Bodhi tree. Now, these three daughters all worked in the domains of seduction, disruption, and emotional manipulation. And their most famous target was, of course, Siddhartha Gautama. Their mission was tied to their father's force. He had already tried storms, demons, armies of fear, and none of them had moved him. So he sent something that was far more precise, and these were his daughters. Because no warrior is undefeated until he has defeated himself. Now he sent first Tanha, who was thirst, and she was not aggressive, she was not loud. She becomes everything Siddhartha ever loved. She is comfort, memory, the warmth of the palace that he had left behind. She reminds him of what it is to have pleasure without shame. She whispers of reunion. She offers relief from the severity of awakening. And her weapon is longing. But the Siddhartha Buddha does not react to this. He watches the feeling rise and pass, and Tanha fades away. And then there is Raga, who is the flame. And Raga does not whisper, she burns. She dances before him with this radiant beauty. She shifts form. She is youthful, divine, cosmic. She magnifies sensation. She tries to awaken not memory, but hunger. She is passion without restraint. She is attachment disguised as devotion. But Siddhartha sees the chain hidden inside her embrace. He does not recoil. He does not engage. He remains still, and Raga cannot bind what does not grasp. So she dissolves. Then comes Arati, who is discontent, and she does not seduce. She mocks. What are you doing here? This is pointless. You are wasting your life. She attacks discipline itself. She sends boredom, restlessness, irritation, doubt. The quiet voice that sabotages commitment. But Siddhartha does not argue with her. He does not defend himself. He remains still. And without reaction, Arati has no fuel. And she disappears. When all the three fail, their father demands proof of witness. And Siddhartha touches the earth, and the ground itself bears witness. And at that moment, Mara and his daughters lose their hold. Not because they are destroyed, but because they are all understood. The descent into Metzlicon. The world had ended more than once, not as a metaphor, not as poetic exaggerations. Ages really had risen and fallen, whole civilizations wiped away, the very structure of reality reset. Like the games the gods keep replaying and never quite getting right. One age drowned in water, another burned in celestial fire, another collapsed under its own violence and greed, until the sky itself seemed tired of watching. Each age left something behind. Ruins sank, names vanishes, languages broke apart into sounds that no one remembered how to use. But there was one thing that did not disappear: the bones. They fell through time like stones dropping in deep water, settling in the lowest regions of existence, in places where memory did not soften, and endings did not apologize. This place was Metzlicon. Metzlicon was not fire and pitchforks. It was something colder. This was a world without sunlight, without birds, without the small accidental beauties that distract the living. There were mountains here that did not care if you climbed them, winds that cut like obsidian blades, and rivers that flowed only to separate, not to nourish. At the very bottom of those 9 layers of difficulty and forgetting, the bones of previous humanities rested, guarded by the Lord and Lady of Death, who were less monsters and more like the clerks of cosmic archives. Above, the gods argued. Some said, "Let the world sleep. The earth is quiet now, and this is good." Others said, "Build a new humanity, but this time make them obedient. No questions, no rebellions, no mistakes." Quetzalcoatl listened. He was the feathered serpent, a god of wind, learning, and ordered motion. He knew what silence meant. Silence after music can be beautiful. Silence after a scream can be relief. But this silence was not earned. It was just empty. A world without people, he said finally, is not balance. It is neglect. The other gods turned toward him. "So what would you propose?" one asked, not kindly. "If there is to be a new humanity," Quetzalcoatl answered, "it should not be made from nothing, as if nothing ever happened. It should be born from what already was, from the bones of those who lived before." Now this suggestion made some gods uncomfortable, because bones meant history. Bones meant continuity. Bones meant that actions had consequences that outlived empires. "Then go," the other said. "A test disguised as consent. If you believe this so strongly, you go down to Metzlicon and bring those bones back yourself." Now Quetzalcoatl did not posture. He did not summon armies or craft a speech about destiny. He simply agreed. And then he descended. Now the path to Metzlicon is not a door you open. It is a series of places where things are taken from you, until all you have left is what you really are. Quetzalcoatl's first steps took him through a region of collapsing mountains, where stone itself moved against travelers. Peaks leaned and fell without warning, forcing him to move not with brute speed, but with anticipation and timing. The god of measured wind understood timing. He breathed, watched, and moved through the shifting stone like a serpent through tall grass. And then came the winds. Not gentle breezes. Winds made of blades. They cut at him as he moved. But the god of air did not fight wind with force. He changed the currents, redirecting some, absorbing others, letting them carve away what he did not need to carry deeper. He passed through regions of darkness so thick it felt like walking through ink. Regions where the cries of the dead sounded like echoes under ice. Regions where distance lied. Step forward took you sideways instead. But he did not rush. Motion is not only speed, but it is also intention. Piece by piece, burden by burden, he came to the lowest level, to the heart of Metlakon. There, amid plains of ash and scattered bone, stood the Lord and Lady of Death. They were not dripping with gore. They did not wave arms dramatically. They watched him with the steady patience of beings who have seen every living thing arrive eventually. "Why have you come here, Quetzalcoatl?" the Lord of Death asked. His voice did not roar. It weighed. "I have come for the bones," Quetzalcoatl said. "To decorate your temples?" the lady asked. "No." "To build an army that cannot die?" the Lord asked. "No." "Then why?" they said together. Quetzalcoatl answered without pause, "So that a new humanity can rise, not from empty command, but from memory. They will be born of what already lived and ended. They will carry that inside them, even though they do not know." The Lord and Lady of Death exchanged a look that mortals would have missed. It was not anger, it was calculations. "You may have the bones," the Lord said, "if you can take them. But nothing in Mitzland is simply given. This realm does not exist to please the living or the gods. If you want them, you will face our trials." Quetzalcoatl nodded once, then let them begin. The first was a trial of direction. The Lord of Death instructed Quetzalcoatl, "Take these bones and circle Metlakon 4 times. Return to this place, carrying them all." Now they gave him no map. The plains ahead looked identical, fields of bone fragments and dust, low hills that shifted as if they were breathing. Quetzalcoatl gathered the bones as carefully as he could, bundling femurs, ribs, jawbones, pieces of skull that once housed thoughts and dreams. He carried them in his arms and moved forward. With each step, the land changed. What had been flat became broken. What had been open became choked with jagged stone. He walked until the landscape itself seemed offended by his persistence. A lesser being would have relied on sight. Quetzalcoatl trusted something else. He listened to the patterns of the wind. Even here in the land of the dead. He noted the way the ash moved, the way sound echoed from distant rock. He let those things guide him, subtle markers in a place designed to erase direction. 1 circle, 2 circles, 3 circles, and on the 4th, the ground began to tilt, as if the realm itself were trying to shrug him off. Ridges rose under his feet, gaps opened suddenly. He stumbled, nearly dropping the bones. He tightened his grip and kept moving, not fast, but steady, until he came once again to the place where the Lord and the Lady waited. "You have completed the trial," they said, and they did not sound pleased, but they did not object. Now the second trial was that of sound. The Lady of Death handed him a conch shell. It was smooth, heavy, and completely sealed. "Blow this as a trumpet," she said, "so that all Mitzlakan hears your call." Quetzalcoatl turned the shell over in his hand. It had no holes, no mouth for breath to enter. A trick then, he understood. The kind that relies on reflex, that a god insulted by impossibility will lash out, shout back, storm away, or break the object in anger. Quetzalcoatl did none of these things. He placed the shell on the ground. He called the smallest beings of the underworld to him, and worms emerged from the soil, thin bodies slicing over stone. "Open a path," he told them. They bore into this shell, carving tunnels through its inner spirals. Then he called bees, high, bright spirits of the surface world, who still answered his wind-born summons. "Fill it with breath," he told them. They flew into the shell's new tunnels, their wings turning the hollow space into a living instrument. Quetzalcoatl lifted the conch to his lips and blew. The sound that emerged was low and vast, a tone that seemed to roll through Mitzland's bones as much as through the air. For a moment, the dead heard something that did not belong in their realm. the wave of memories, the sweep of air across open land, the echo of a world above. The Lord and Lady of Death glanced at each other again. "You have completed the second trial," they said. Their voices held no warmth. The third trial looked simple. "Carry the bones out of Mexican," the Lord said. "Take them to your living world, if you can, and we will not stop you." He said it kindly, but that was a warning. Quetzalcoatl gathered the bones again, this time aware of how fragile his mission truly was. These were not stones that he could simply replace if dropped. These were the remains of ages. He began the journey upward. The paths were no easier in reverse. The wind still cut, the mountains still moved, but now a new difficulty joined them: other hands. As he climbed, unseen forces jostled him. The ground beneath his feet shifted more violently, not like the natural tremors, but like the hand shaking a table for the pleasure of watching things fall. Birds with obsidian beaks, agents of the underworld, some say, swooped down, pecking at the bones, trying to knock them free. At a narrow ledge above the dark ravine, the assault became too much. One hand struck his arm, one slip, a misjudged step, and Quetzalcoatl stumbled. The bundle of bones spilled from his grasp, clattering across the stone, hell across the roof. Some remained close, others shattered as they hit the ground, breaking into smaller and smaller pieces, rolling into cracks, falling into the ravine below. It was not a clean drop. This was chaos, clattering loss. The sound echoed through Mexican. The Lord and Lady of Death listened. "Look," they said, "the bones are broken. Humanity cannot be restored. Our records remain intact, but you have failed." Now, in many myths, this is where a god would rage, where the story would become a battle. Quetzalcoatl did not draw a weapon. He knelt. He moved slowly, carefully, collecting what fragments he could reach. Whole bones, half bones, pieces too small to name. His hands shook, not with fear of punishment, but with the weight of what he was trying to hold together. He could not get them all. There would be gaps, missing pieces, parts of former humans lost forever. And he knew what that meant. This humanity would not be perfect. It could not be. And still, he did not stop. When he gathered all that he could, Quetzalcoatl did something that changed more than one world. He wounded himself. He drew a sharp shard of bone across his own skin and let his blood fall into the pile. Now, divine blood, rich with memory and intent, mixed with the broken fragments of ancient lives. He did not sprinkle a ceremonial drop and step away. He bled. The bones drank. Pele, goddess of fire, creation, and jealousy. Before the islands had names, before stone remembered the shape of mountains, before land dared to rise above the sea, there was only movement. The ocean whirled endlessly, dark and conscious, and within it traveled a force that refused stillness. Her name was Pele. She was not born in one place. She emerged again and again, from flame, from hunger, from the deep furnace of the world. Pele was fire with intention. Her hair flowed like smoke caught in the wind, black and endless, carrying embers in its wake. Her skin glowed as if lit from within, sometimes warm as sunlit stone, sometimes red hot with fury. Her eyes were not gentle. They burned with the knowing of something older than fear. Where Pele walked, the earth opened. She carried fire not as destruction, but as becoming. Lava spilled from her footsteps, slow and unstoppable, reshaping the world without apology. The sea hissed when she approached, retreating from her heat, recoiling from her will. But Pele was not alone in the world. Beneath the waves, where light dies and pressure rules, dwelled her sister, Namaka. Namaka was the ocean given thought. Her skin shimmered like moonlight on black water. Her hair moved as currents move, slow, heavy, inexorable. Her eyes were deep, ancient, and cold with memory as only the sea could have. Where Pele burned with emotion, Namaka endured with patience. She ruled the deep places, the trenches, the crushing silence, where nothing escapes gravity or consequence. And she resented her sister. When Pele arrived, the sea was pushed back. Where fire rose, water was displaced. Each new land Pele created was a wound in Namaka's domain. To Namaka, Pele was reckless, too loud, too hungry, too disruptive. To Pele, Namaka was suffocating, a force that drowned passion, swallowed movement, and demanded stillness. They were not enemies born of hatred. They were sisters born of opposition. Fire that must move, water that must contain. When Pele first settled, she believed she could build a home. She dug into the earth, carving chambers for her flame, shaping mountains from molten stone. She believed the land would hold her. But Namaka would not allow it. With crashing waves and rising tides, Namaka answered. She flooded Pele's home, cooled her lava, shattered her growing islands, and dragged them back into the sea. Storms followed Pele wherever she lingered too long. Island after island, Pele was driven away. Each retreat hardened her. Each loss sharpened her jealousy, not of her sister's power, but of her sister's stability. Namaka already had a kingdom. The ocean accepted her without resistance. Pele had to fight for every inch of ground. And still, she moved forward. She crossed the sea again and again, chased by waves, hunted by storms, carrying her fire across the dark. What humans would later call volcanoes are the scars of this journey, places where Pele tried to stay and was forced to flee. And then at last, she reached Hawaii, the youngest island, the strongest spine of the stone. Here, the earth did not break beneath her. It answered. Pele dug deep, deeper than she ever had before. She struck the mantle of the world itself, tapping into the planet's heart. Fire surged upward and stayed. Namaka became, again, furious. Waves slammed against the stone, storms tore at the land, but this time the land endured. Fire and water clashed, not to destroy each other, but to define their boundaries. And Pele remained. She claimed the volcano as her body and the island as her spine. She did not rule from the sea or the sky, she ruled from beneath. The people felt her presence in trembling ground, in glowing rivers of lava, in the fertile soil that followed destruction. Pele was not cruel, but she was emotional. She loved fiercely. And when she loved, she gave warmth, growth, and abundance. Forests returned when the lava had cooled. Life sprang that appeared to be dead. The people learned to honor her, to respect her fire, to speak her name with care. Because Pele was also jealous. When she was disrespected, when love was betrayed, when humans forgot the land was alive, her anger rose. Lava flowed without mercy, villages vanished beneath molten stone. It was not punishment, it was correction. Pele did not destroy out of hatred. She destroyed because stagnation is a lie. Fire clears what no longer serves, and creation requires sacrifice. Namaka watched from the deep, no longer chasing her sister, but never forgiving her. The ocean still presses against the land, testing it, reminding Pele that nothing remains unchallenged forever. They are still bound. Fire rises, water answers. The world is shaped between them. Even now, Pele sleeps beneath the islands. Not gone, not silent, but waiting. Because fire never truly rests. The myth of Thanatos and Sisyphus, when death becomes delayed but never denied. Now Thanatos was known as the god who comes softly. In Greek mythology, he is the god of death, not the ruler of the underworld, not the judge of the souls, but he is the moment that life releases its hold. Born of Nyx, the goddess of the night, Thanatos moves without shadow or spectacle. He has no hunger, no malice, no pleasure in his tasks. Where others rage or bargain, he simply arrives. And thus the Greeks have given him the name, the Gentle One. When Thanatos comes, breath slows, pain loses its grip, the body understands before the mind does that the time has come to stop resisting. He does not rush, he does not linger. He closes the distance between life and what follows as quietly as sleep. He moves without sound, without warning, and he does not miss. Enter a king who sees the end coming. Sisyphus, king of Corinth, is not a great warrior or a favorite son of the gods, but he survives by cleverness sharpened into instinct. He listens too closely. He notices patterns others dismiss. He is a man who lives by staying one step ahead of consequence. And at this time, consequence speaks very clearly. An oracle tells him the truth without poetry. His time is near. His thread has been measured, and death is already on its way. And Sisyphus believes this because he has learned that the gods rarely lie. They simply allow you time enough to decide how badly you want to resist. The deathbed. Soon Sisyphus falls ill. His strength leaves him gradually, not violently. He takes to his bed and waits, surrounded by the quiet room that already feels less real. His breath grows shallow, his hands tremble. He knows the sign, and he knows who will come. And so Sisyphus, as always, is prepared. He ordered chains brought to him, fine ones, expertly forged, riddled with magical energy. He studied them as his body studies weakness, rehearsing the moment that he would activate these very special chains. This was not going to be a fight with death, but it was going to be a delay, because Sisyphus had decided that when Thanatos arrives, that he will not go quietly, and thus he is ready. The arrival. Thanatos comes as he always does, not with the sound, not with force, but with a change in the air. The room grows still, not abruptly, but as if the world itself was deciding to stop fidgeting. Shadows soften along the walls. The light dims without fading, settling into quiet, even glow. Harsh edges lose definition. Nothing flickers, nothing strains. Breath slows. The air cools just enough to be noticed. Not cold, not warm, but balanced. Pain loosens its grip. The body, even before the mind understands it, begins to rest. Thanatos does not announce himself. He does not open doors or cross thresholds in the ways that others do. One moment, the space is occupied only by the living. The next, it is shared with a divine creature. He stands at the bedside, unarmed, unhurried, but always certain. His presence does not demand surrender. It invites it. Time feels different near him, not stopped, but resolved. The future loses its urgency. The past releases its weight. There is only this moment, held gently, waiting for resistance to simply fade. This is how death arrives when it is not violent. It is quiet, complete, inevitable. And Sisyphus, watching from his bed, feels the world settle into stillness and smiles. The capture of Thanatos. For a long moment, nothing happens. Thanatos stands at the bed, as he always does, waiting for the final loosening, the breath that does not return. that will no longer cling to things. He never needed to hurry. Mortals always reach the same end on their own. And Sisyphus watches him carefully, but not with fear, with close attention. His body is weak, his breath is shallow, but his mind is awake, moving quietly beneath the stillness of the room. He feels the calm pressing in, the invitation to let go, and it would be easy to accept, easier than anything he has ever done. And yet, Sisyphus speaks. Not loudly, not urgently. His voice barely disturbs the air. "You come gently," he said. "I did not expect that." Thanatos does not answer at all at first. He doesn't need to. But neither does he stop Sisyphus from speaking. Words, after all, cannot delay death. "They say you bind the living," Sisyphus continues, gesturing weakly towards the chains laying carefully beside the bed. "That when your work is finished, no one resists you." Thanatos turns his gaze, not sharply, not suspiciously, but with mild attention one gives to curiosity. "These," Sisyphus says softly, lifting the chains with trembling hands, "are well made, strong and precise. I would understand your work better if I could see how they were used." Thanatos hesitates, not because he is wary, but because he has never been asked. He steps closer, reaches out, and demonstrates, patiently, gently, without urgency. These chains close, smooth and certain, just as they have countless times before. Only this time they close on him. The room does not explode in chaos. There is no thunder, no scream, no resistance. Thanatos looks down at the chains, then back to Sisyphus, and for the first time, death does not move forward. For the first time, the moment does not complete itself. Sisyphus exhales, a breath he should not have taken. Death has been delayed. The world without an ending. The stillness does not leave the room, but still it spreads. Across the world, something falters. Blades strike flesh and do not finish their work. The wounded linger, unable to cross the threshold. The old remains suspended in pain, waiting for a release that does not come. Battles rage endlessly. Suffering stretches without resolution. Life without death does not become precious. It can become unbearable. And Thanos stands bound, silent, neither struggling nor pleading. He does not rage. Rage would change nothing. He waits, because waiting is also part of his nature. And then the gods begin to notice. Ares frees Thanatos. The world begins to rot from the inside. Wounds do not close, and they do not end. Blood spills without release. Warriors fall and rise again, screaming, locked inside bodies that refuse to finish dying. Battlefields stretch on endlessly, victories never concluding, losses never settling. War becomes noise without resolution. And the god Ares sees it all, because this is his domain, not death, but ending through violence. And without death, even war is meaningless. And Ares descends to earth, not with patience, but with force. Where he arrives, the air tears, the ground shakes. Order does not soften, it breaks. He does not announce himself. He does not ask questions. He goes where the imbalance points him, and he finds Thanatos bound. The god of death stands silent in chains, unchained, uncomplaining. He has waited because waiting is what he does. Ares does not speak to Sisyphus. He does not scold. He does not threaten. He simply shatters the chains. Metal screams as it breaks. The stillness collapses. The air rushes back into motion as if it were released from a held breath. And Thanatos steps free. The room itself exhales, and without a word, death resumes. Across the world, screams cut out. Wounds close by finishing. The old finally find rest. Battles end, not because peace has arrived, but because conclusion has. Thanatos does not thank Ares. He does not linger, he simply continues. And in that moment, Sisyphus is taken. The second defiance. Sisyphus is taken, but not humbled. Even as Thanatos leads him away, his mind is already moving, measuring, listening, searching for the next seam in the order of things. He has already delayed death once. He has tasted the power of interruption, and he believes that he can do it again. Before his final breath leaves him, Sisyphus gives his wife careful instructions. No rites, no burial, no offerings to the gods. His body is to be left unhonored, unmarked, and incomplete. It is a small act of defiance, almost invisible, but Sisyphus understands the system well enough to know that the system is dependent on completion. A complaint in the underworld. In the realm below, Sisyphus does not scream or rage. He simply complains. He approaches Persephone, queen of the dead, not as a rebel, but as a wronged man. His voice is measured, his posture is respectful. I have been abandoned, he says, denied the rights that seal a life properly. I have been sent here dishonored. And Persephone listens, not because she is easily moved, but because the complaint is valid. The dead are owed their rights. Others depend on it. She grants him permission to return, to correct the failure, to ensure that what must be done is properly done. She gives him a temporary mercy. Sisyphus returns to the living world, and then he does not go back. He resumes his life as if nothing has changed. He walks under the sun, he eats, he laughs, he delays, stretching time thin, pretending ignorance. Days pass, and then years, and the gods watch. This is no longer cleverness, this is flat out contempt. When Sisyphus is finally taken. It does not happen suddenly. There is no thunder, no gods descending in fury, no hands reaching from the shadows. One morning, Sisyphus wakes and feels something different. The air is heavier, not hostile, just final. The sun rises but does not warm him. Food has lost its taste. Voices reach his ears a moment too late, as if the world has begun to move on without him. For the first time since his return, Sisyphus feels behind. He walks the halls of his palace and notices how small they feel, how familiar, how finished. He looks at the faces around him and realizes that none of them are looking back in the same way. Time has been moving, and he has not. And then he understands, not with fear, with clarity. There are no tricks left. Thanatos comes again, not bound, not delayed. He arrives as always, gently, precisely, without urgency. The room settles, the edges soften, and breath slows. And this time, Sisyphus does not smile. Thanatos does not accuse him. He does not remind him of past defiance. He simply stands, patient as ever, waiting for the moment to complete itself. Sisyphus looks at him and knows, finally, that this visitation is not a negotiation. He has already spent every allowance. The walk back. There is no struggle. Sisyphus rises where he stands and follows, not because he has accepted death, but because resistance has lost its shape. The clever paths have closed. The seams he once pried open are gone. As they move, the world begins to thin. Sounds dull. Colors flatten. Distances shorten. The living realm does not mourn him loudly. It simply releases him. And for the first time, Sisyphus feels something unfamiliar. Before the judgment. When he is brought before the gods, they do not shout. There is no anger in their voices, no need for it. What Sisyphus has done is already complete. That record is closed. They look at him not as an enemy, not as a hero, but as a man who mistook delay for victory, and they decide his fate without cruelty, without passion, and without precision. The stone. The stone waits at the base of the hill. It is larger than Sisyphus suspected, but not impossibly so, but undeniably real. Its surface is rough, unyielding, cold even in the dim light of the underworld. It does not glow. It does not hum with magic. It offers no hint of meaning. Just wait. The hill rises before him, long and bare. Its slope neither cruel nor forgiving. There is no summit in sight, only the knowledge that one exists. Sisyphus stands there for a moment longer than needed. He studies the incline, he measures the angle. Old habits surface. Somewhere in his mind, calculations begin to form. Pace, leverage, breath. He's still looking for the how. And then he places his hands against the stone. The first push is awkward. His footing slips slightly. The stone resists, not violently, but stubbornly, as if it had never known movement and sees no reason to learn it. His muscles strain. Breath tightens in his chest. Slowly, the stone begins to roll. For the first time since his final descent, Sisyphus feels effort again. Not pain, not punishment, but effort. The stone moves upward, inch by inch. The sound it makes against the ground is dull and constant, a low scrape which fills the silence. There is no audience, no gods watch, no voice offers commentary. It is just him, the stone, and the hill. And for a moment, a dangerous moment, hope stirs. Progress is made. He adjusts his grip. He finds a rhythm. His steps become more confident. The slope steepens, but he adapts. This is work, and work he understands. Work that rewards persistence. Perhaps he thinks this is not endless. Perhaps there is an end after all. Then the summit comes into view, and with it, the truth. As the stone reaches the crest, its weight shifts. Not dramatically, not violently, just enough. His hands lose purchase, his footing falters, the stone pauses, and then it rolls back. Not fast, not angry, but it returns with certainty. Sisyphus watches it descend, feeling the effort drain out of his body as sound fades down the hill. The ground trembles faintly when he reaches the bottom, settling into place, exactly where it began. Silence returns. Sisyphus does not cry out. He does not curse the gods. He stands at the top of the hill, breathing hard, staring at the empty slope before him. This is when he understands, not that the task is difficult, but that it is perfectly designed. Every push feels like progress. Every failure will erase nothing but effort. Every ascent will teach him that movement is not the same as arrival. The punishment is not the stone, it is the repetition. And after the long moment, Sisyphus returns. He walks back down the hill. He places his hands on the stone again and again, as will be his fate. Epilogue. The hill remains, the stone remains. Time passes, though it no longer matters. Sisyphus pushes, the stone rolls back. The pattern continues unbroken. Above him, the world of living moves on without any notice. Seasons change, cities rise and fall, names are spoken once, then forgotten. None of it reaches the slope where he works, and yet there's no screaming here, no punishment renewed with each ascent, no voice counting failures. Only motion, only breath, only the quiet weight of effort repeated until it loses urgencies. Thanatos does not return to watch. The gods do not observe. They have finished. Sisyphus pushes because the hill is there. He pushes because the stone waits. He pushes because pushing is all that remains. And something between the beginning and the end of the climb, the mind grows quiet. The thought loosens. Resistance fades in a rhythm. Not peace, but stillness. The stone rolls, the hill endures, and the story, like this task, does not end. It simply continues. The Shape of Death, a myth reading. Before death had a name, it had no face. There was no figure waiting in the dark, no voice calling from beyond, no blade raised in judgment. There was only absence. The earliest humans did not imagine death as an enemy. They experienced it as an event, as a sudden cold, as inevitable as night. A body stopped moving. A fire went out. A voice was never heard again. Death did not arrive, it happened. And because it had no intention, it inspired no image. As civilizations formed, something changed. When humans learned to build cities, they also learned to remember. And memory demanded explanation. If life had meaning, then its ending had to as well. So death became a place before it became a person, a realm, a crossing, a river, a shadowed road. In many early traditions, death was gentle, not merciful, but calm. It came like sleep. It came like dusk. The dead were not punished, they were processed, guided, measured, prepared. Death was not here to hurt you, it was there to receive you. But the world grew crowded. Empires expanded, wars multiplied, famine followed power wherever it went. And death stopped feeling distant. It moved into homes, into streets, into churches. When people began dying by the thousands, death could no longer be abstract. It needed a face. The turning point came when death became visible, not as a myth, but a spectacle. Plague emptied cities. Fields filled with bodies instead of crops. Entire generations vanished between seasons. And suddenly, death was no longer rare. It was constant. When something becomes constant, humans stop asking if and start asking when. And when fear demands explanation, authority provides answers. This is when death learned to judge. The end of life was no longer neutral. It was deserved. It was earned. Avoided if you obeyed. The dead were no longer simply gone, they were sorted, saved or condemned, accepted or judged, and judgment requires a judge. So humanity dressed death, not in flesh but in symbol, a skeleton, because beneath every difference, all humans look the same. A robe, because authority hides itself, because power never shows its hand. And a blade, not a sword of war, but a tool of harvest, the scythe. Because death does not fight you, it collects you. The Grim Reaper did not appear all at once. It assembled, piece by piece, century by century. Artists painted what people feared. Priests preached what people needed to hear. And death stepped forward, not as an idea, but as a presence. Tall, silent, watching. It did not rage, it did not plead, it waited. And this figure was not born from ancient scripture. It was born from trauma, from watching neighbors vanish overnight, from mass graveyards blessed in a hurry, from doorbells ringing so often they lost meaning. The Grim Reaper is not death itself. It is humanity's attempt to look death in the eye. And once death had a face, it could be spoken to, appealed to, mocked, or feared. Stories emerged of death being tricked, outrun, delayed. Not because humans believed they could win, but because they needed to imagine resistance. Even in myth, death always wins, but sometimes it listens. As centuries passed, the Grim Reaper followed humanity forward, into books, into theater, into art, then into films, then into comics, then into jokes. Because when something terrifies you long enough, eventually you laugh. Not because it is funny, but because laughter is control. Thoth, god of cosmic structure, language, and recorded reality. Thoth is not a god who rules through force. He does not conquer, he does not command armies, he does not demand worship through fear. Thoth governs something far more dangerous. He governs understanding. In Kemetic thought, the universe does not function because it's powerful. It functions because it is ordered, because it can be measured, because it can be named, because it can be remembered. And Thoth is the intelligence that makes that possible. Now, Thoth is known by many names, each reflecting a different aspect of his function. In Kemet, he is Jehudi, a name tied to intelligence, speech, and precision. He is called Lord of Divine Words, he who reckons time, and scribe of the gods. To the Greeks, he becomes Hermes, and later Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great mind. In esoteric traditions, he is not treated as a personality at all, but as a principle of intelligence. Sometimes he appears with the head of an ibis bird, sometimes as a baboon. These are not aesthetic choices. The ibis represents calculation, balance, and precision. The baboon represents observation, memory, and lunar rhythm. Thoth's forms are not symbolic masks, they are functional avatars. Now, this is what Thoth actually governs. Thoth does not create the universe. He does not destroy it. He does not rule it. He makes it legible. Thoth governs language as a creative force, writing as memory made permanent, mathematics as cosmic truth, time as a measurable system, law as recorded balance. In Kemetic cosmology, chaos is not defeated by violence, it is stabilized by Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance. And Thoth is Ma'at's recorder. He does not decide what is true, he ensures that truth is accurately accounted for, and that distinction matters. Thoth and the structure of reality. In myth, Thoth is often present during moments of dispute among gods. When Horus and Set battle for kingship, Thoth mediates. When divine law must be clarified, Thoth records. When order must be restored, Thoth calculates. He is not neutral because he is indifferent. He is neutral because structure must be impartial. Reality does not care who you are, only whether balance is maintained. Thoth embodies that principle. Now, the weighing of the heart ceremony. One of Thoth's most important roles appears in the judgment of the dead. When a soul enters the hall of Ma'at, the heart is weighed against the feather of truth. Anubis conducts the ritual. Osiris presides, but Thoth records the outcome. He does not judge the soul, he does not punish it, he does not save it. He ensures the process is correct. In this moment, Thoth represents the idea that justice is not emotional, it is procedural. Cosmic awareness is not mercy or cruelty, it is accuracy. Language is power. Now, to understand Thoth, we must understand how ancient cultures viewed language. Words were not labels, they were forces. To know the true name of a thing was to have power over it. To write something was to make it real beyond the moment. Thoth is the god of that threshold. Speech becomes spell. Writing becomes law. Memory becomes continuity. This is why Thoth is associated with magic, not illusion, but as applied knowledge. Magic is simply understanding reality well enough to manipulate it. And his influence beyond Kemet. Thoth does not remain confined to Kemet. Through cultural contact, he becomes Hermes. Through Hermeticism, he becomes the universal mind. Through alchemy, he becomes the architect of transformation. Through philosophy, he becomes intellect itself. By the time he appears as Hermes Trismegistus, Thoth is no longer just a god. He is the idea that consciousness can understand the universe it inhabits, and that idea survives every empire. The Book of Thoth. Now, Thoth's most famous relic is not a weapon or a crown. It is fittingly a book. And the Book of Thoth represents total knowledge, language that can command nature, words that can bend reality. Myth warns that those who read it without wisdom lose themselves, not because knowledge is evil, but because unprepared awareness destabilizes identity. This is a recurring pattern in Thoth mythology. Knowledge is dangerous, but power without structure destroys the holder. This is why Thoth is not a king. Thoth never rules a kingdom. This is not an omission, it is a statement. Kings come and go. Structures remain. Thoth does not sit on a throne because reality itself sits on his function. Empires collapse, languages die, But mathematics persist, law persists, memory persists, and thus so does Thoth. In modern thinking, Thoth appears as the architect of intellect, the symbol of recorded reality, the reminder that understanding carries responsibility. He is not faith, he is not belief, he is the mechanism between both. Thoth does not ask to be worshipped, he asks only to be understood. He stands where knowledge becomes permanent, where speech shapes reality, where truth is measured instead of declared. As long as humans seek to understand the universe rather than to dominate it, Thoth remains present, not as a ruler, but as the mind that keeps the universe legible. Melina, the Inuit sun goddess who refused to be caught. Now, the Arctic is not empty. It only looks empty to people who've never had to survive in a world where the sky can erase you. Up here, silence is language, wind is warning, and light is not decoration. Light is a verdict. Because in the far north, the sun doesn't simply rise, it returns, like something that had left on purpose, like someone who remembers why they ran. And her name, whispered through the ice, through stories, through generations, is Melina, the Inuit sun goddess, North America's burning eye. So picture this, a tundra horizon so wide it feels like the edge of the world. Snow drifts like plain dunes, dark rock teeth jut from the land, and above it all, a sky that doesn't behave like other skies. A sky where the sun can refuse to set, or disappear for weeks. A sky that makes time feel like an animal, restless, hungry, unpredictable. In that world, you don't worship the sun because it's pretty, you respect it because it decides if you live. And Melina is that decision. Melina, the woman who became daylight. Melina isn't portrayed as a distant glowing ball. She is a woman, a being with presence, with hair like night wind, with skin kissed by cold and sun alike, with eyes that carry the weight of the horizon. She wears the Arctic the way royalty wears a crown, not for fashion, but for survival. And around her, whether you imagine her in traditional adornments or mythic cinematic armor made of hide, bone, and sunlight, there is always the same feeling. She is not gentle. She is not the soft warmth of spring morning. She is the harsh truth of daylight, the kind that exposes tracks in snow, the kind that reveals what someone tried to hide, the kind that turns secrets in the shadows that have nowhere to go. The beginning. Before the sky, there was a house. In one of the most famous Inuit tellings, Melina begins not in the heavens, but on earth. She lived with her brother. His name was Ananigan, often described as the moon. And in some versions, another sister exists too, a presence in the household, another point on the triangle of family and fate. But the core is always the same. Melina is there. Ananga is there. A home exists. And like many mythic homes, it is not safe because it has walls. Sometimes the first danger in a mythology is not the monster outside, it is the betrayal inside. The violation when trust breaks. There is a night, and the night is thick. No stars you can count, no lamp strong enough to banish what's about to happen. Melina's brother violates her, and in some telling, she comes into her darkness and does not know who until the truth is uncovered. And when the truth becomes clear, when the betrayal reveals its face, something fundamental snaps. Not just in Melina, in the world. Because in the Inuit myth, the cosmos isn't mechanical, it's emotional, a moral universe, a relationship universe. And when an act like that happens, the world does not shrug and move on. It transforms. The torch. Flight becomes fire. Melina does not stay. She takes a torch, a fire in hand, and she runs. Not into the woods, not into another village. She runs into the sky. And as she rises, her torch becomes brighter, hotter, purer, until it is no longer just a fire. It is the sun itself. And it is the first blazing refusal, the first celestial no. And behind her, a Ningen follows. He is frantic, hungry, ashamed, possessed by pursuit. He grabs his own flame, and his light becomes the moon, not as radiant, not as triumphant, a lesser fire, a chasing fire. The chase, why the sun and the moon move. Now the sky makes sense, not because science is wrong, but because the myth is describing something else. Not the physics of motion, but the meaning of motion. The sun and the moon cross the heavens, not as random objects, but as story. Melina runs ahead, unreachable, sovereign, burning. Anangan follows, always behind, never arriving. And in many tales, the moon grows thin, weak, diminished, because he forgets to eat. Because obsession is a kind of starvation. That is why the moon waxes and wanes. Sometimes he regains strength, sometimes he fades, but he never stops chasing. And Melina never stops moving, because the first rule of her myth is she will not be caught again. The Arctic miracle, when day doesn't end. And here's where the Inuit sky becomes legend, because in the far north, the sun can hang above the horizon for days, weeks, months. A long golden endurance, a daylight that refuses to die. This is not a cute fun fact. This is Melina's personality written across the atmosphere. When Melina decides to stay, she stays. When she leaves completely. And then she returns. You feel it in your bone. Because for the communities living in the Arctic, the returning sun is not just nice weather. It is a spiritual event. It is cosmic reunion. A promise that the world hasn't abandoned you. Melina's power. Light as witness. But here's the thing most people miss about Melina. Her power isn't just heat. It's exposure. Light reveals. Light tracks movement. Light turns footprints into evidence. Light makes the hunter visible. Light makes the hunted see the land. Melina becomes the witness of the sky. And here's the harsh truth to that. Because of her story, the sun isn't a smiling mother. It's a survivor, a living boundary, a force that says, I will not disappear for your comfort. I will not soften the truth. I will shine until you can't pretend anymore. The cosmic archetype, the solar feminine who escapes. A lot of cultures imagine the sun as male, a king, a warrior, a father, a creator seated on a throne of fire. But Melina is a different archetype. She is the solar feminine as escape and sovereignty. She is the feminine divinity not defined by who she belongs to, but who she refuses. She is a goddess who doesn't negotiate with violation. She doesn't argue, she doesn't plead, she moves. And in moving, she becomes untouchable. In moving, she becomes the sky's dominant rhythm. Now, imagine Melina as she would appear in the cinematic myth. She walks across a bridge of snow and ice. Behind her, the sun blooms like a halo, too bright to stare at. Wind pulls her hair like black smoke. Her silhouette is sharp against the gold. She doesn't smile as a friendly deity, but she moves forward, always forward. Each step is a reminder that this is a goddess not begging for worship. This is a goddess whose existence is proof of survival. So when the sun stretches over the Arctic, when it refuses to set, when it stares down at the frozen land like an unblinking eye, remember this. It is not just daytime. It is Melina, still running, still sovereign, still refusing to be caught. And in the world where people have tried to rewrite what happened, erase what happened, hide what happened. Melina becomes something sacred, a light that will not let the story disappear, because her myth teaches a hard truth carved in the sky. Sometimes the only way to survive is to become untouchable. Sometimes the only way forward is to turn your escape into a new cosmos. And the sun is not always kindness. Sometimes the sun is a woman with a torch and a vow. Echidna, the cosmic mother of monsters. Now, Echidna is not called herself a monster, but she is the mother of them. Her name in Greek means viper, Echidna, and this word carries venom. It is ancient, coiled, and is patient. She does not belong to the generation of Olympian gods. She does not sit in marble halls. She does not command lightning or law. She belongs to something much older. Now, most traditions name her as the daughter of Phorcyrus and Ceto, ancient sea deities, beings well formed in the earliest layers of mythic existence. And other traditions go deeper still. They claim she was born of Gaia, the earth itself, and Tartarus, the abyss beneath the foundations. And if that lineage is accepted, then Echidna is not simply born into the world, she emerges from its structure. She is earth and depth combined. She is soil and void. She is surface and underworld. And her form reflects that duality. From the waist up, she is woman, beautiful, aware, composed. From the waist down, she is serpent, scaled, coiled, eternal. And this is not a curse. It is a declaration. The upper form represents consciousness. The lower form represents instinct. The serpent is older than temples, older than kings, older than writing itself. And across cultures, the serpent represents regeneration, tonic power, and the pulse of life that moves beneath the visible world. Echidna is not stitched together from parts. She is a whole. She is the seam between civilization and wilderness. She dwells in a cave, far from cities, far from Olympus. Ancient sources place her in the wild regions of Scylla. She does not seek attention. She does not seek conquest. She inhabits the margins, and from the margins she births power. Her giant, the great storm giant who once rose against Zeus. Typhon embodies violent chaos, wind, fire, upheaval. Echidna embodies generative chaos. Together they form a bloodline that predates order and survives beyond it. They do not seek to rule Olympus. They produce what challenges it. This is where Echidna reveals her true cosmic role. She is called the mother of monsters, but that phrase is much smaller than her actual being. She birthed Cerberus, the three-headed guardian of the underworld gates. She births the Hydra, the regenerative serpent that multiplies when wounded. She birthed the Chimera, the fusion of lion, goat, and serpent, a living contradiction of categories. She birthed Ortherus, the twin-headed guardian beast. In some traditions, she births the Sphinx, the riddle keeper who tests gods. These are not mindless horrors. They are thresholds. They stand at borders. They guard gateways. They demand transformation. Each one of her children forces confrontation. Each one requires growth. Each one stands between humanity and its next stage. Echidna does not birth destruction without design. She births resistance. Without resistance, there is no evolution. Without danger, there is no courage. Without monsters, there is no hero. Her existence reveals a deeper mythic law. The universe does not grow through comfort. It grows through tension. Echidna is the womb of that tension. She is primordial earth, refusing to be domesticated. She is chaos bloodline woven into the fabric of reality. Even the Olympians cannot erase her impact. Now, some later traditions claim she was slain by Argus Pantopus, the many-eyed giant servant of Hera, while she slept. Now, symbolically, this represents surveillance destroying wild fertility, order suppressing the abyss. Yet, even in that version, her offspring remain. Her legacy persists. Her bloodline continues. You cannot eliminate the mother principle of resistance. You can only attempt to manage its expression. Echidna represents the archetype of the Dark Mother, not evil, not malicious, but always necessary. The Dark Mother births the forces that compel transformation. She ensures that stagnation is impossible. She ensures that power must justify itself. She ensures that every kingdom must confront what it fears. Civilization defines itself by the monsters it overcomes, but someone must give birth to those monsters. That someone is Echidna. She is not chaos in motion, she is chaos as inheritance. She is the reminder that beneath every structure lies something older, something coiled, something fertile, something waiting. Echidna is not a footnote in heroic myth. She is the hidden foundation, primordial earth, chaos bloodline, mother of thresholds. And without her, there would be no trials, no transformation, and no legends at all. Adiriel, the fallen angel of divine physiology and cosmic awareness. In the celestial order, not all angels were created to sing. Some were created to understand. Adiriel belonged to this second lineage, not a herald, not a throne guardian, not a voice in the endless choir. He was an observer. Among the earliest structures of the heavens, Adiriel was assigned a role few others could fulfill. He studied not the stars, but the framework that allowed stars to exist. Not worlds, but the architecture that held worlds together. He examined the mechanisms of consciousness, the relationship between awareness and form, the way divinity expressed itself through structure. Where other angels reflected glory, Adiriel examined design. Adiriel's form reflected his function. His physique was dense, deliberate, and stable. Strength without ornament, power without display. Each muscle existed with cohesion. Each wing functioned as an instrument of perception. To Adiriel, the body was not a vessel. It was a language, a system through which intelligence moved. Over time, Adiriel reached a realization that would later be called dangerous. That awareness does not descend through command, it emerges through comprehension. That obedience deserves order, but understanding transforms it. This distinction marked the beginning of his divergence. Adiriel did not rebel. He did not gather followers. He did not challenge authority. He asked questions. Why consciousness was restricted, why angels were forbidden to fully perceive themselves, why knowledge was segmented instead of integrated. In celestial hierarchy, curiosity was tolerated, completion was not. The moment of the fall did not arrive as a punishment, it arrived as awareness. Adiriel achieved full integration of his own structure. In understanding himself completely, he crossed a boundary that had never meant to be crossed. Not a boundary of space, a boundary of permission. When Adiriel fell, his wings did not burn. They remained intact. This alone set him apart from other fallen figures. His descent was not destruction, it was removal. He no longer fit within the limitations of the system that had created him. On the lower planes, Adiriel did not decay. His form stabilized. His awareness expanded. He perceived time not as a sequence, but as a layered presence. He perceived matter not as inert, but as responsive. He did not see himself as fallen. He saw himself as unbound. To humanity, Adariel would later appear as myth, a silent winged figure, powerful, observing, never ruling. He did not tempt, he did not command, he waited. Later traditions struggled to categorize him. Some called him dangerous, others called him corrupt, many called him prideful, and these labels served a purpose. They discouraged imitation, because Adariel represented a truth institutions could not allow, that awareness is not granted, it is developed. In mythic terms, Adariel occupies a liminal role, not a ruler, not a destroyer, not a savior. He is a threshold, the embodiment of the question, what happens when divine beings fully understand themselves? Adariel appears only to those already standing at the edge, to scholars who sense fractures in doctrines, to mystics who feel the limits of belief, to creators who recognize intelligence embedded in form. He does not teach, he clarifies. Adariel remains fallen only by definition. In function, he is something entirely different. A witness, a reminder, a warning that knowledge, once integrated, cannot be unlearned, and awareness, once achieved, changes alignment forever. Agwe, Admiral of the Living Sea. Stand at the edge of the Atlantic long enough and you begin to understand something. The ocean is not empty. It moves with intention. It breathes with memory. It carries names that history tried to erase. Every tide pulls at something deeper than the shore. Within that vastness stands Agwe. He is not the chaos of crashing waves, nor the reckless fury of the storm. He is the discipline within the tide, the command inside emotion, the authority that charts the horizon. Agwe is admiral. His presence is not loud, but it is undeniable. His skin is imagined in deep maritime blue, not decorative sky blue, but the heavy blue found beneath the surface where the light begins to disappear. Blue that borders on black, blue that holds secrets. Against the depth, gold rests easy, chains like navigational lines, medallions like compass centers, adornments that echo anchors pulled from the seafloor. Water does not thrash against him, it parts. When he stands in waist-high surf, the waves bend around his frames. The tide slows in recognition. The current listens. His crown rises like coral and plume, red and gold, cutting against the ocean air. Not vanity, but rank. Not decoration, but office. He governs sea salt. He governs ships. He governs routes, and routes shape destiny. The sea has been commerce, invasion, escape, exile, return. It has carried explorers and conquerors, traders and captives, dreamers and displaced. Agwe presides over every crossing. He is the keeper of the passage, the witness of migration, the silent authority over the line between homeland and horizon. For the African diaspora, the Atlantic is not just geography, it is archive, it is grave, it is womb, it is rupture and survival intertwined. Millions crossed unwillingly, millions never saw land again, millions endured and carried memory forward. Within voodoo cosmology, the sea is threshold, a place where worlds meet and spirits travel. Offerings to Agwe are set afloat in small boats and released into the open water. They are not placed on altars inside walls. They are entrusted to distance. If the sea returns the offering, it was refused. If it carries it outward, it was accepted. Even in ritual, the message is clear. The ocean decides. Agwe becomes more than a maritime spirit. He becomes the guardian of the scattered, protector of those who crossed and survived, keeper of those who did not. The Atlantic is not silent under his command, it remembers. Storms rise and some say it is random weather. Others whisper that the sea corrects itself, that it refutes certain weights, that it rejects certain chains. Agwe does not rage without purpose. He commands. In ceremony, when he mounts a devotee, the posture changes. The body straightens. Movements become precise, controlled, naval. This is dignity in the bearing, authority in the gesture. He may salute, he may demand water. He may move as though standing on the deck of a ship no one else can see. His authority is not theatrical, it is discipline. He is often paired with La Sirene, the mermaid of depth and longing. If she is the song that draws you to the sea, he is the structure that governs its currents. If she is seduction and emotion, he is sovereignty and protection. Together they embody the emotional and commanding halves of the sea, call and command, longing and law. Agwe's roots reach beyond the Caribbean. His essence echoes older West and Central African water traditions, river spirits, deep water guardians, forces of crossing and return. He carries ancestral continuity across oceans. Water was humanity's first mirror, its first road, its first boundary. Agwe stands within that paradox. He is not the wave that crashes for spectacle, he is the tide that endures. For a people dispersed by water, he represents strength without cruelty, authority without oppression, protection without noise. He does not shout across the sea. He stands within it, steady, unmovable, commanding routes no empire could fully control. The ocean still moves, ships still cross, and beneath every horizon line, the admiral watches. Angrboda, the grief bringer. In Norse cosmology, the end of the gods has a mother, and her name is Angrboda. She does not rule a hall in Asgard. She does not sit among the Aesir. She doesn't even shout across battlefields. She simply stands in Ironwood, and from her comes Ragnarok. In Jotunheim, far from the ordered halls of Asgard, stood a region known as Ironwood, a place of shadow, prophecy, and old power. There lived Angrboda, a Jotun, not a goddess of Asgard, not a servant, not subordinate, but a being of primordial force. Her name means she who brings grief. And in Norse myth, names are not simply decorative. They are destiny. She is not introduced with fanfare, no feast hall, no divine spotlight. She exists in the margins. And the margins is where fate is born. The union of chaos. Into Ironwood comes Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the fracture in divine order. What happens between Loki and Angrboda is not a romance mythology. This is alignment. This is chaos meeting inevitability. From this first union are born three beings who would define the end of the gods. Fenrir, the wolf who would devour Odin. Jormungandr, the serpent who will poison the skies battling Thor. And Hel, the sovereign of the dishonored dead. Now understand the weight of this. From her, she births the end of Odin, the death of Thor, and the ruler of the underworld. This is not coincidence, this is structural myth design. The mother of Ragnarok. The gods discover these children, and they panic. Fenrir is chained. Gormagand is cast into the sea. Hel is sent to rule the dead. The Aesir try to contain the future, but Angrboda, she is not slain, she is not imprisoned, she is not even punished. She remains in Ironwood, just watching. There is something chilling about that. The father is bound in chains after his crime. The children are exiled, but the mother, untouched. Because she represents something older than the Aesir. She is not rebellion, she is consequence. The shadow feminine. Angrboda does not swing a hammer like Thor. She does not sit on a throne like Odin, and she does not boast like Freya. But she births inevitability. In mythic structure, she represents the womb of catastrophe, the feminine aspect of fate, the quiet architect of endings, and the shadow mother archetype. She is the inversion of the nurturing goddess, not because she is evil, but because she gives birth to what must happen. In Norse cosmology, even the gods cannot escape fate, and Angrboda is one of fate's instruments. Why she matters. Without Angrboda, there is no Fenrir. There is no world serpent. There is no hell. There is no Ragnarok as we know it. She does not dominate the text, but she dominates the outcome. And that's the myth at its sharpest. The loudest characters are rarely the most powerful. Sometimes the one who stands in the forest is the one who changes the mythic world. Belphegor, the god who became a demon. The name Belphegor does not begin in hell, it begins in stone. Winds move across the eastern highlands beyond Jordan. The air there is dry, carrying dust that clings to skin and cloth. The mountain named Peor rises from that terrain, not the tallest peak, but one visible enough to command attention. On its heights, altars stood, not carved in the Gothic imagination of medieval demonology, but in the rough, practical stone of the ancient Levant. Oil burned in shallow bowls, animal fat crackled in the heat. Smoke lifted towards the sky in dark ribbons that bent with the wind. The people who climbed this mountain did not believe they were serving a demon. They believed they were honoring a lord. Baal Peor. A Baal was not a devil. A Baal was a master, a possessor, a ruler. Across Canaan and its neighboring lands, each territory had its Baal, its localized manifestation of storm, fertility, and dominion. Baal Peor belonged to Moab. His name was tied to the place, the geography, to the very slope of that mountain. The rites associated him were agricultural and seasonal. Fertility was not metaphorical. It meant rain. It meant grain rising from the soil. It meant herds multiplying. It meant survival. And in a land where drought meant death, fertility gods were not luxuries. They were necessities. The wind at Peor would have carried the scent of blood and incense. Drums might have sounded low, steady, repetitive. The ritual has a rhythm. It is the rhythm of petition. Hands lifted, voices called out, offerings were made. This was not chaos, it was covenant. A tribe honoring the power they believed governed their land. The mountain watched, the sky shifted, the god was invoked. And somewhere across the Jordan, another people moved closer. The Israelites encamped near Moab during the wilderness wandering. Their narratives tell it sharply, without sympathy. The book of Numbers speaks of enticement, of Moabite women drawing Israelite men into sacrifice, of participation in the rites of Baal Peor. The text does not linger in description. It moves quickly to consequence, plague, anger, zeal. But imagine in that tension, in that valley, two peoples, two cosmologies, two understandings of divine order. When the Israelites joined in the rites of Peor, it was not merely an act of personal indulgence. It was a fracture in a covenant identity. To the authors of that text, this was not curiosity. It was betrayal. And the response was violent. Phinehas, grandson of Aaron, takes a spear and enacts judgment. The plague halts. The narrative closes with an affirmation of loyalty to the God of Israel. And Baal Peor is left in the text as a name stained by transgression. He is no longer described in ritual detail. He becomes shorthand, a symbol of seduction away from the covenant. But from the Moabite perspective, nothing has changed. The mountain still stood. The rites likely continued for generations beyond the moment preserved in Hebrew scripture. What changed was a story told about him. The first transformation of Baal Peor was not physical. It was narrative. He moved from local god to rival god, from rival god to condemned god. And once a deity is condemned within a monotheistic framework, his fate is sealed. He cannot remain neutral. He cannot become false. Centuries pass. Empire shifts. Babylon rises. Judah falls. Exile shapes theology. During and after exile, Israelite religion hardens around exclusive monotheism. The old language of other gods gives way to something sharper. There are no other gods. There are idols. There are deceivers. There are forces that lead astray. The gods of surrounding nations were reframed, not as alternate divine beings, but as corruptions. The worship is no longer competition, it is error. Baal Peor survives in memory only as a warning. His fertility rites become excessive. His mountain becomes a site of shame. The god who once received smoke and song now exists in text as a cautionary tale. And yet the name persists. They linger. When Christianity spreads through Rome, it inherits not only Hebrew scripture, but the memory of ancient rival gods. The theological imagination expands. Angels and demons are categorized. Hierarchies are drafted. The unseen realm is systemized. Pagan gods are not ignored, they are reclassified. From the late antiquity into the medieval period, the transformation deepens. The old Baal names scattered across scripture begin to crystallize into demonic entities. Baal Zebub becomes Beelzebub, and Baal Peor becomes Belphegor. The sound shifts slightly in the passage through language, Hebrew to Greek, Greek to Latin, but the root remains, Belphegor. By now, he no longer stands on a mountain. He stands in hell. The grimoires of the Renaissance and early modern period describe him with specificity. He is counted among the princes of the infernal realm. In some traditions, he is assigned to the deadly sin of sloth. But even here, something in his ancient character survives. Belphegor tempts through prosperity. He offers ingenious discoveries. He whispers solutions. He encourages innovation. He does not destroy fields with fire. He promises abundance without labor. Picture him not merely as a skeletal horror, but as a presence. The air around him feels heavy, not with heat, but with stagnation, not with the violent heat of wrath, but the slow suffocation of complacency. His throne is less a seat of conquest and more a monument to decay. Stone eroded by time, mechanisms rusting, clocks frozen at the moment effort ceased. His voice is not thunderous. It is patient, measured, persuasive. He does not shout, he suggests. Why strain when there is an easier way? Why toil when innovation can replace effort? Why discipline the body when comfort is within reach? The sin of sloth in medieval theology was not simply laziness, it is spiritual apathy, a refusal to pursue what is difficult but necessary, a collapse of will. Belphegor becomes the embodiment of that collapse. Once he presided over fertility, the multiplication of life. Now he presides over inertia, the multiplication of excuses. And yet, the through line is subtle. Both identities revolve around abundance. The Baal Peor was invoked to increase crops and herds. Belphegor tempts humans with the increase of wealth and convenience. What changes is the moral framing. In Moab, abundance was a divine blessing. In medieval Europe, abundance without labor was suspicious. The god did not necessarily transform in nature, he transformed in interpretation. Where Baal Peor once stood beneath the open sky, Belphegor is described beneath no sky at all. The Renaissance grimoires do not give him wind or horizon. They give him rank. In such books as the Pseudemonica Daemonium, he is counted among the infernal authorities, not a wandering spirit nor a minor imp, but power with jurisdiction. He is seated. That detail matters. Seated implies permanence, authority, and establishment. Hell in these systems is not chaos. It is organized, layered, administrative. Princes govern domains. Legions serve under them. Titles are precision. Belphegor does not rage across battlefields. He governs the slow collapse of discipline. Imagine the chamber in which he sits. Not fire, not brimstone, but stone. Ancient stone, damp and cold. The kind of cold that creeps to the bone. Torches burn low along the walls, not for warmth, but for formality. Ritual illumination. The air smells metallic, faintly of oil and of rust. Around him are the remnants of industry. Wheels frozen mid-turn, mechanisms half complete, tools abandoned where they fail. This is not destruction by violence, it is destruction by neglect. Belphegor tempts through ease. Grimoires describe him offering discoveries, mechanical insights, clever innovations, sudden wealth. He is said to help people make ingenious devices. And the irony is sharp. The demon of sloth inspiring innovation. But medieval theologians did not see the contradiction. To them, invention without moral grounding was dangerous. Cleverness detached from virtue led to pride, greed, and spiritual decay. Belphegor does not tempt you to lie, he tempts you to avoid effort, to substitute convenience for growth, to take the path that weakens you slowly. His presence would not be loud. He would feel like heaviness in limbs, a fog in the will, a whisper that almost sounds reasonable. Rest, delay, there is time. The medieval understanding of sloth was not about naps. It was about spiritual paralysis, a sadness that makes discipline feel pointless, a resistance to pursuing the good. Belphegor becomes patron of that paralysis. His throne imagery grows more grotesque after each imagination. Some depictions render him skeletal, emaciated, crowned with twisted thorns. Others show him seated on a toilet-like structure, a crude medieval satire emphasizing filth and corruption. These images are polemic. They are not history of Moab. They are theology weaponized, but they reveal something important. The god of rival culture is not merely rejected, he is humiliated. His dignity is stripped, his former sacredness inverted. The process is complete. Baal Peor once presided over ritual abundance. Belphegor presides over moral decay. Yet in the darkness of the chamber, beneath the torchlight and the stone, something ancient lingers. The mountain has been replaced by a throne, the open sky replaced by a vault of shadows. But he is still seated. He is still a lord, still associated with increase, whether crops or innovation. The difference lies in the framing. To the Moabites, increase was survival. To medieval Christians, increase without toil was corruption. So Belphegor becomes the whisper behind shortcuts, the architect of systems that remove struggle, the subtle underminer of strength. Imagine approaching him. The chamber is silent except for the faint scrape of metal shifting somewhere unseen. The floor is cold beneath your feet. There's no wind, no external world. Only him. His eyes would not blaze. They would watch. Patient. He would not promise kingdoms. He would promise relief. And that was far more dangerous, because relief feels merciful, but relief without discipline becomes erosion. The 7 deadly sins were not random categories. They were patterns of decay. Pride swells, envy corrodes, wrath burns, greed consumes, gluttony devours, lust entangles, and sloth suffocates. It is the slow death. Belphegor darkness is not spectacle, it is stillness. The stillness of ambition abandoned, the stillness of muscles unused, the stillness of a mind that once sought greatness and now seeks comfort. And so the god of Peor, who once stood amid smoke and wind, now sits in stone silence, not because he changed in essence, but because the world that named him changed his theology. From molten altar to infernal throne, from fertility rite to demonic catalog, from Baal Peor to Belphegor. This transformation tells us as much about human memory as it says about this god. Gods do not always die. Sometimes they are reassigned, rewritten, recast in shadows. Belphegor remains one of the clearest examples of this transformation. A deity once invoked for life and abundance becomes a prince of decay, not destroyed, but reinterpreted. And in that reinterpretation lies the final layer of the myth, because every age defines its demons according to its fear. Moab feared the drought. Medieval Europe feared moral collapse. Modern readers fear stagnation, systems that remove agency, technologies that promise ease but demand nothing of the soul. Belphegor sits here, not necessarily in hell, but in the space where effort weakens and convenience grows. He does not roar, he simply waits. Irzuli Danto, the scarred mother, the fire, the protector. There is a goddess who does not smile softly. There is a goddess who does not ask for admiration. She stands scarred. She stands armed. She stands holding a child in one arm and a blade in the other. This is Irzuli Danto. She's not delicate romance. She is not silk and perfume. She is love forged in violence. She is the petrol fire of Haitian voodoo. And where she lives in cosmology. Now, in Haitian voodoo, there is a distant creator, Bondi. Bondi does not interfere directly in daily life. Instead, humans interact with Agwe, the spirits. The Agwe are not gods in the Western Greek Olympian sense. These are forces, personalities, ancestral intelligences, archetypal energies. And among the Agwe, there are two major energetic currents. Rada, which is cool, ancestral, and stabilizing, and Petro, which is hot, reactive, revolutionary. Erzuli Danto belongs to the Petro current. Petro is fire. Petro is gunpowder. Petro is a spirit that rises when oppression becomes unbearable. Petro Agwe are not calm river spirits. They are storm systems. Danto is one of the most fierce among them. And she is not Erzuli Frida, and this is a critical point. There is another Erzuli, and that is Erzuli Frida. Now, Frida is luxury. Frida wears lace. Frida longs for romance, for perfume, for admiration. Frida is the dream of European refinement layered over Afro-Caribbean devotion. But Danto is different. Danto is the dark-skinned sister. She is scarred. She is often depicted holding a knife. She is associated with working-class women, market women, and single mothers. Whereas Frida wants to be adored, Danto demands loyalty. Frida weeps when love fails. Danto remembers who betrayed her. The split between them is not just theological. It is representative of class, it is representative of skin tone, and it reflects a colonial history. Two faces of the feminine under oppression, one aspiring to be treasured, one refusing to be destroyed. The scar. One of Danto's defining features is the scar on her face. And this imagery is not random. She is often synchronized with Madonna of the Sheikh Ta Chow, a Catholic icon whose face visibly bears scars. So when enslaved Africans were forced into Catholic structures, they encoded their spirits within the same imagery. Spiritual camouflage, as it were, or survival theology. The Black Madonna, dark-skinned, scarred, maternal, became a vessel through which Danto could remain present. But the scars matter symbolically. A scar is healed trauma. A scar is injury survived. A scar says, I was cut, I did not die. Danto is not the untouched maiden. She is the wounded mother who survived. And that difference changes everything. Now, she is truly a mother archetype. She is fiercely maternal. She's associated with motherhood, especially protective motherhood. Not sentimental motherhood, protective. The kind that will fight, the kind that will kill, the kind that will burn down a system before allowing harm to her child. In many depictions, she holds a child against her chest, and that child represents the vulnerable, the future, the oppressed, or the community at large. She is evoked by women who have been betrayed, women who have been abused, women who have been abandoned, single mothers who had to become both nurturer and warrior. She is not the goddess of romantic fantasy, she is the goddess of survival. Revolutionary fire. There are strong traditions linking Petro spirit to the Haitian revolutions. The ceremony of Bois Cayman often mytholized an ignition point of the revolution, including invoking fierce spirits. Petro Agwe were the spirits of that uprising. Whether Danto was explicitly invoked or later associated, mythically she represents revolutionary fire itself. She embodies the moment when endurance becomes resistance. She is the spirit that says enough, not politely, not diplomatically, but definitively. And that is why she is feared. Petro energy is not comfortable energy. It is transformative through destruction. Jealousy reconsidered. Now, Danto is often described as being jealous, but jealousy in this context is misunderstood. This is not petty insecurity, this is protective possessiveness. This is the jealousy of someone who has already lost everything once, the jealousy of someone who will not allow betrayal again. In this way, we compare her to Hera, the jealous wife, or Sekhmet, wrath unleashed for cosmic balance, or even Kali, destructive mother clearing corruption. Danto sits in the lineage of fierce feminine archetypes, but her rage is grounded in historical trauma. It is not abstract cosmic balance, it is lived memory, and this makes her psychologically very powerful. Now, in the diaspora, she has a specific identity. She represents more than theology. She represents Afro-diasporic survival. Voodoo itself is a system born from forced displacement, slavery, and cultural fusion. Within that system, Danto embodies the mother who endured plantation brutality, the woman who carried lineage forward under violence, the refusal to dissolve into erasure. She is sacred anger made legitimate. And this is deeply uncomfortable for colonial narratives, because sacred anger cannot be dismissed as hysteria. It is spiritualized resistance. Now, Petro versus control. Now, Petro energy emerges under pressure, when systems become suffocating, when injustice calcifies. Petro spirits are reactionary in the truest sense. They react to oppression. In that sense, Danto fits perfectly in larger mythic themes of freedom versus control. She is what happens when control goes too far. She is the spiritual eruption. You can suppress Rada energy. You cannot indefinitely suppress Petro. Eventually, it ignites. Why she matters now. Modern relevance is obvious. She doesn't need to be forced. Single mothers navigating hostile systems, women navigating betrayal, communities navigating institutional neglect. Danto becomes an archetype for protective boundaries, unapologetic defense, refusal to accept disrespect. She does not preach forgiveness as virtue, she demands accountability. And in a world that often romanticizes passive femininity, she stands as a counter image. Scarred, armed, loving, dangerous. If Frida is the dream of being chosen, Danto is the vow never to be abandoned again. If Frida is perfume, Danto is gunfire. If Frida longs, Danto remembers. She is not the goddess of romance. She is the goddess of loyalty. She is the fire that protects children. She is the scar that speaks. She is Erzulie Danto. Hades, the god who never lied. Now, Hades is not feared because he is cruel. He is feared because he is honest. While all the other gods bargain, seduce, disguise, deceive, Hades does none of this. He does not appear in disguise. He does not test mortals. He does not pretend to be merciful, nor does he threaten punishment to inspire obedience. He simply administers death. There is no spectacle in his realm. No fires or brimstone, no screaming choirs of the damned. The underworld is not a torture chamber. It's a bureaucracy of eternity. Souls arrive, they are processed, and they are placed where they belong. Not where they want to be, not where they hope to be, where they truly and actually belong. And Hades does not lie because lies require desire. And among all things, Hades desires nothing. He is death as an administration. Now, in Greek myth, chaos is not death. It is unchanged life. It's endless ambition, endless reproduction, endless conquest. Death is the corrective mechanism that keeps existence from collapsing under its own excess. So Hades is not the enemy of life, but he is its boundary. When kings overreach, Zeus strikes them down. When heroes rage, Ares feeds on their violence. When lovers betray, it is Aphrodite who stirs more chaos. But when people die, when the end comes, Hades simply does his job. He has no judgment speeches. He has no speeches at all. He's not gonna punish you with his words. He's not going to ridicule you. And he is the only god who is known to 100% keep his word. If Hades says something will happen, it happens. When Orpheus descends into the underworld to retrieve Eurydice, Hades does not trick him. He gives him a single condition. Do not look back. No hidden clauses, no divine wordplay. Orpheus fails not because Hades lies, but because humans cannot resist doubt. That was his downfall. The tragedy is not Hades' cruelty, it is Orpheus' inability to trust certainty. Hades never breaks the rules. He is the rules. Now, why the gods fear him? Now, the Olympians rule through personality. It's ego, emotion, alliances. Hades rules through finality. Zeus can be overthrown. Poseidon can be defied. Hera can be appeased. Even war can be avoided. Death cannot. Hades does not need worshippers. He does not need temples. He does not need praise. Every god eventually answers to him, although quietly. Now, Persephone is the only compromise that we see, and this is the one story people cling to as evidence of Hades' villainy, the story of his wife. This is not a story of abuse. It is a story of cosmic balance. Hades does not kidnap her in secret. He asks Zeus for permission. He follows protocol of their world and their time. The seasons change not because Hades is cruel, but because death must share time with life. Persephone becomes queen not by force, but by eating the seed, by accepting the role. And even love in the underworld is contractual. And Hades is vastly misunderstood. Humans prefer lies that feel good over truths that feel cold. They would rather believe in punishment than accept this as maintenance. Hades does not judge you. He does not care if you are famous, rich, or loved. He only ensures that nothing overstays its welcome. In a universe ruled by ego, he is the only god who operates without one. Hades is not evil. Hades is necessary. And that is why he will never be loved in the way that the others are. Because love wants exceptions, and death does not accept those. Graves with fire. When the drums fall silent and the earth is freshly turned, she arrives. Not from the sky, not from the sea. From the grave itself. Maman Brigitte walks where the dead are laid, where names are carved into stone and forgotten by the living. She is the keeper of the cemetery, the one who knows every grave by touch, every bone by memory. Fire follows her steps, not to destroy, but to purify. She laughs loudly because death does not frighten her. She drinks, she curses, she dances among the tombs, because grief must breathe, or it rots the soul. Maman Brigitte is the wife of Baron Samedi, but she is no shadow to him. Where he opens the door, she decides what happens next. She listens to the dead, to the woman who was beaten and buried in silence, to the child whose name was never spoken again, to the man whose blood was spilled without justice. The dead do not whisper to Maman Brigitte, they demand. And when wrong has been done, she remembers. Her fire is not rage without reason. It is fire of correction. The fire that burns sickness out of flesh. The fire that turns curses back on those who earn them. The fire that protects the innocent and punishes the cruel. She heals with the same hands she destroys with, but justice is not gentle. When she mounts a body, her voice becomes sharp, raw, unfiltered. She swears, she laughs, she tells the truth without apology. Those who approach her with respect receive protection, healing, and strength. Those who mock her, exploit the dead, or harm the powerless learn quickly why the cemetery is not a place of weakness. Maman Brigitte stands between worlds, feet planted among bones, head crowned with fire. She is proof that death does not belong to fear, that spirits remember, that injustice does not escape consequence. And when the living forget, when the powerful believe they are untouched, when crimes are buried with bodies, Madame Brigitte walks the grave at night, igniting candles that cannot be blown out, because the dead are never silent, and she is always listening. Metatron, angel of cosmic administration and institutionalized awareness. Metatron is not a god who fell. He is not a god who rebelled. He is not a god at all. Metatron is what happens when awareness is allowed to remain, but only on the condition that it no longer disrupts the system. If Thoth represents cosmic structure, and Odin represents awareness purchased through sacrifice, Metatron represents awareness that has been absorbed, regulated, and formalized. He is not exile, he is compliance. Metatron is known by titles that do not suggest personality, but rather position. He is called Prince of the Presence. He is the heavenly scribe, the lesser Yahweh, the chancellor of heaven, the voice behind the throne. These titles are controversial not because they make Metatron powerful, but because they make him too close. Metatron stands near divinity without being divine. He executes authority without originating it. He speaks without being the source. And that tension defines him. In Jewish mystical tradition, Metatron is often identified with Enoch, a man who walked with God. Enoch does not die, he is taken. But he does not return as a god, he returns as a function. Enoch makes Metatron not through rebellion or ambition, but through transformation into something useful to the cosmic order. And this matters.